I went outside to shovel snow after my devotion. I was reading from the book of John. You know, John is a masterpiece. The writer gives vivid descriptions of the events in the life of Jesus Christ. I want to suggest, when you read the book of John, pay particular attention to the small details, because John has a way of packing important theological information in these small details. For example, I was reading this morning from John chapter 19, verse 29. We read, "A jar full of sour wine stood there. So they put a sponge full of sour wine on hyssop branch and held it to his mouth." Immediately I sensed that in these few words, the writer tells us that there was a vessel full of wine, there was a sponge, and there was a stick. And John describes this to us and says this was hyssop branch. Now, that may seem insignificant, but these are words of an eyewitness who is describing events at the cross, and he wants us to look beyond the suffering of the cross. First, he mentions here the wine. Do you remember that at the beginning of the book of John, John describes Jesus when he was launching his ministry, turning water into wine at the wedding in Cana, giving new life to the wedding party. I would suggest that this was the wine of life. But here in chapter 19, at the end of Jesus' ministry, we are informed of a wine that I would call the wine of death that was thrust into Jesus' dry mouth as he breathed his last. At the beginning, John says, because of the act of the wine, the miracle of the wine, the disciples believed in him. Here at the end of Jesus' ministry, we are told of this sour wine. And then Matthew records that the centurion and his company believed. Secondly, John gives us this small detail: hyssop branch. John wants us to look at the Old Testament. Do you remember the first Passover? That God instructed Israel to use the hyssop branch to paint with blood on the doorposts. Thus, that power in the blood spelled off death. Then during the Leviticus and Numbers, we are told that the hyssop branch was also used in the ceremony of purification. I remembered the powerful cry of the great psalmist David when he said in Psalm 51 verse 7, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow." I want to suggest that it is powerful at the crucifixion that we have this powerful reminder of the hyssop branch. First, this reminds us that Jesus is the Passover lamb. Secondly, we are reminded that his blood cleanses us from all sins. My friends, I looked at the snow as I was shoveling and prayed, Lord, I thirst for the end of sin in my own life. I thirst for relief. Purge me with Hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. And my friend, God is willing if we can trust ourselves into his hands. May God bless you.